DFC Intelligence, a research and consulting firm specializing in video games, analysts, basically. It's a group of analysts. They've put out a report, kind of, predicting, analyzing how they think the Switch 2 is going to do. Essentially predicting how the launch of the next system is going to go and how well it's going to do versus the competition next generation. Now, it is worth saying that analysts are a lot like leakers and rumor mongers, where we kind of just wish they would all go away, and yet we can't help but talk about everything they say. We are powerless to stop ourselves from just hanging on every word and making articles and videos and whatnot, even though analysts have something of a shaky track record. It's literally just people guessing. That's the thing. It's literally just people looking at trends and just kind of guessing what they think will happen. And especially in the video gaming space, I used to spend a lot of time kind of haunting VG charts and those forums and articles and whatnot, and there was like this huge disdain for analysts. Michael Pachter was always just coming in and just saying stupid stuff, and they were so often wrong, and they were so often like clearly only looking at what has happened and not making like any attempt to like actually gauge what might happen. They're just like, well, this happened last time, so it's gonna happen next time too. And yeah, they were very often just super wrong about everything. However, in this case, DFC Intelligence, like I said, specializes in video games, and so that does help. It does help their credibility. A lot of other analysts are just tech analysts. They just kind of analyze the entirety of the tech industry, and so they will sometimes like apply certain ideas and sensibilities that kind of apply to the whole tech industry. They'll apply it to video games in a way that doesn't always exactly make sense. They don't always seem like they know what they're talking about, but in this case, I don't know, it's a perfectly fine little report here. And to sum the whole thing up, they believe that the next Nintendo system will be the quote clear winner next generation. They have extremely high hopes for the next Nintendo system. They believe that it is going to absolutely outsell everything else. But let's look at some of the details. Obviously, they expect the next system to launch sometime next year, probably in the spring. They expect a much stronger launch versus the original Switch, but that's pretty obvious because, yeah, Nintendo has a bunch of momentum here. They've got a lot more Switch fans than they used to have overall Nintendo fans. So yes, of course, it's going to be a very strong launch, and they say a lot of the early numbers are going to depend on how many units Nintendo can manufacture, but again, that's another kind of obvious point. They also rightly point out that it is going to be hard for the Switch 2 to ever beat the 2020 sales of the original Switch. I would not be surprised if Nintendo struggles to kind of hit that peak, to kind of match that high score in unit sales, as it were, maybe even forever, because it was a really, really crazy year for them. DFC Intelligence believes that the portable form factor of the Switch is kind of key in its selling so well. So if we know that they're going to do another Switch, then it's just the fact that households can have multiple units, that itself is enough to dramatically increase the sales potential of the system. They also rightly have noticed that we're all kind of dying for the next system. It's been 8 years and we're all very, very excited. So, it's all pretty basic stuff. It is kind of doing that analyst thing of just saying, like, it's really, yeah, it's like I said, it's the biggest problem with analysts and their predictions is it's usually just what happened before, that's going to happen again. So it's easy to look at the success of the Switch and to simply say, yes, that will happen again. Switch 2, it will happen again. But at the same time, you had plenty of analysts predicting that because the Wii did well, the Wii U will do well as well. And then I clearly remember, before the Switch came out, it looked really good. It looked like a really great product, but you still had people being like, yeah, but the Wii U didn't do well, and therefore the Switch probably won't do well either. You can't predict the future. Nobody can actually predict the future. We don't know what's going to happen. And especially with Nintendo, you can't just look at the hardware. It's the software that you play on the hardware. Yes, the Wii U had a flawed concept. There were a lot of problems with it, but I do still believe that the software output, the games just didn't have broad enough appeal. And yes, the form factor of the Switch and the pricing and all of that stuff, that did matter, but it also mattered that Nintendo put out really big games that had really, really broad appeal. It was kind of just the perfect everything. It was the whole entire recipe worked out. And so with the Switch 2, yes, a lot of it is going to depend on what games they make for the darn thing. Like, imagine a Switch without Super Mario Odyssey or Breath of the Wild, you know? Like, just imagine those games just didn't happen. Sure, you had Mario Kart, but like, all of these things really matter. And I don't know, what if Switch 2, they're just like, yeah, you know, no Zelda. We're just skipping this system. It takes 10 years to make a Zelda now, so you have to wait for Switch 3. I don't know. All that to say, we don't know exactly what'll happen, but DFC Intelligence seems to be very confident, and it all feels, you know, pretty fairly obvious, you know, and they talk about the competition too. They talk about, you know, the Switch 2 is going to release technically halfway through the broader generation, and a few years from now, we'll get the PS6 and the Xbox, whatever bad name they inevitably choose, and they predict that only one of those consoles will do well and the other one will struggle. Gee, I wonder which one is probably going to struggle. And gee, I wonder why you predict that one of them is going to struggle while the other does well. Has that maybe happened before? Whatever the case, though, they believe that the Switch 2 will be the clear winner. Next generation will easily beat the competition, will sell really well. They are predicting 80 million sales by 2028. And that's bold. That is bold. That is basically assuming that the next system will essentially do as well as the Switch. And I'm not personally willing to bet on that yet. I want it to, and I think there's a perfectly fine chance that it will. I just wouldn't bet on it. However, I talk a lot of smack about analysts, but these ones probably do actually know a lot more about this stuff than I do, I will completely admit. And even if a lot of this stuff is fairly obvious, I don't know. It's cool to see. I like it. I like the confidence. I like that this agency, this firm, I like that they are very confident in the next Nintendo system. It feels pretty good. Nice to see some positivity. You know what I mean? And hey, you know what? I keep saying, you know, don't count out the Switch 2 not doing as well. It's still technically possible, but we also have to remind ourselves that the Switch 2 is probably going to be powerful enough to play like multi-plat cross-gen games. I mean, sure, maybe that'll change next generation with the PS6 and the Xbox, whatever. Maybe at that point, games will now be too powerful that the Switch 2 is lagging behind again. But I think it's more likely, just with the way that the tech is going, everything is so scalable, I think it's more likely that we're going to see an even stronger third-party multi-plat presence on the Switch 2, because it's just going to be that much more capable of playing these other games that are on these other systems. Sure, they gotta scale it down a bit, but that's going to be easier than ever. So I don't know, maybe that alone is enough to you know, make us feel pretty confident that DFC Intelligence is right, and the Switch 2 will do very, very well.